Yeah, now is it better now? Yes. Yeah, okay, you didn't hear me. So, so I apologize for speaking in English, but as we are the panel of Albanians, Albanian activist and a Bosnian scholar and myself, we decided to somehow do it in this language. So I said to Jelena that she made a grave mistake for choosing this panel to be the last one. It is the idea and the plan that we somehow finish in some positive tone. We have to, it's the end of the conference. But at the same time, it's really a very hard moment to somehow end, especially here in Belgrade, on a positive note. And when I was thinking how to start, I was in fact collecting several things that we need to mention. The previous panel gave us a very strong incentive for that as well. A very powerful panel, by the way. So I wanted to start with a news from 7 days ago. Probably you have heard it. I heard it just in passing like 2 days ago. Thought it was fake news, was checking whether it was fake news, hoping it is, but it is not. So Trump's State Department just declared abortion, DEI, and LGBTQ+ rights human rights violations, and the world is stunned. In the jaw-dropping escalation of the Trump administration's war on basic freedoms, the State Department has quietly rewritten the definition of human rights to target abortion access, LGBTQ+ equality, DEI policies, free speech protections abroad, and even countries that allow refugees into their borders. The stunning new guidance sent to every US embassy and consulate on Earth orders American diplomats to treat the following as human rights abuses: countries with state-funded abortion, countries with workplace DEI protections, countries that allow gender-affirming care for transgender youth, countries with hate speech laws that crack down on extremist threats, and countries that accept migrants seeking safety. In other words, if a country protects women, LGBTQ+ people, minorities, immigrants, or the public from violent speech, the Trump administration wants the world to believe that country is violating human rights. We know that this is not the first time that such a thing is happening. I mean, we know similar policies, laws, bills from other countries, such as the neighboring Hungary or a little bit far away Poland. Yet, we also know, first, that this is Eastern Europe, that it is semi-periphery. We had ways to somehow distinguish that and say that that's, I don't know, retrogressive, backsliding. We didn't learn democracy well in that region, but the home of democracy, the cradles of democracies are there to keep us safe. All of you, primarily people from civic sector, know much well how the appearance of Trump and his second coming affected almost immediately the work of primarily here feminist and NGO and feminist and LGBTQ+ NGOs. But now this is the next level, so to say, the next level of atrocity. If we add to this, which really affects us on a very personal level, all of us, like persons or institutions, or even the notion that we are building a certain kind of society, or our desires to build that kind of society, if we add to that, at this very moment, in a triangle between Palestine, Sudan, and Ukraine, the entire international legal order, in which at least some of us here wanted to believe in the 1990s, when at least we here from the post-Yugoslav region were living through something which looked like a complete nightmare. Now we see that the wars, and not just the wars, but the complete illegality of wars and immorality being inscribed in that triangle that can actually become a quadrangle if Venezuela, so Latin America, joins in. we see a complete loss of certain kinds of, I don't know, moral, legal, even epistemological pillars to which we can rely on. It's, I think, very bad. And I want, before giving the words to the two of you, I just want to say that for me, this is the third time that I'm sitting in this place this year, in this very chair. The first two were much nicer occasions, or the moment was much nicer. Not the occasions was definitely not much nicer. The first one was on the 19th of March, so immediately after the Sound Cannon March. However, I was invited here to speak with the Russian community of expats and to explain what on earth is going on in Serbia to those people. The level of kind of staunch positivism that was taking place at this podium was really incredible, even after the Sound Cannon. It was just a month and a half ago, I think, when it was the second occasion when I was sitting here and we were talking about fascism, mentioned at the previous panel, and instances of anti-fascism. And where do we have anti-fascism today? I claimed that student movement is an instance of anti-fascism, and I still strongly believe that this is the case. However, what we came to learn in just this month and a half, so after the 1st of November and the commemorative meeting that we had in Novi Sad, is that the state in which we are today is using that levels of naked force against its citizens and will do anything in their power to remain where they are. So it makes us wonder whether a year of something which I truly believe is in its spirit absolutely different to the anti-gender mobilizations that we are going to talk a lot about today. It's night to me here. It's somehow we are faced in Serbia today with the fact that the best ideas or the best practices, when you are somehow hitting the wall all the time, and the wall is not just the guns, but the wall is this illegal settlement in the center of Belgrade called Chatiland, is something which then loses its potential power and even the beauty that it had the power to wield on all of us. This is where I'm going to stop. So if we met just 2 months ago, I would be less negative that I am now. And I would like us to, in fact, talk a little bit about the situation in this region that we politically call Western Balkans, which is the ones that the three of us represent. With us today is Amadilo. Sorry, I did not say the name right.
It's okay.
No,
Amarildo.
Amarildo. When Amarildo is an independent LGBTQ plus activist and expert. And when I asked Jelena to tell me a little bit more about Amarildo, and she said he is one of the most brilliant activists in the region.
No pressure.
No pressure. Absolutely. Yes, pressure. And I was kind of surprised that next to him we will also be having Selma, who, when Jelena started to explain to me who Selma was, I said, no, you don't have to tell me anything. I know Selma is a brilliant mind. Selma is a teaching assistant at the Faculty of Political Sciences at the Department of Sociology, although she's a philosopher, and at the University of Sarajevo. So we will be having two people talking about, we decided on anti-gender, but then somehow also to try to touch upon all these other very many instances of where we are, thinking that our semi or maybe just periphery is also ripe with all the problems of this kind of monster capitalism that we are living in at this stage in time. And then, hopefully, when we come to the later part of the discussion, we are going to also have some positive thoughts. So maybe we start with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't say that Amarildo is from Tirana, just that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the kind words, and also like the way you brought up the issues, because I will start by saying that as far as Albania is concerned, for example, like, yes, these are like small countries. We feel and look like we are in the periphery. But in many ways, we are not, because we are used as the perfect locations for the so-called proxy wars, where basically the experiments are done, the influence is expanded, the boundaries of geopolitical powers are, you know, like set upon, and that can be really, really challenging and traumatic for communities like the one that I'm part of, the LGBT community, but also in general for, in this case, for what's happened, especially in the last year, for democracy, for human rights, for rule of law, and for a rule-based international system. Because Albania is a country that came out of isolation, extreme isolation, embraced the free world as a country which also embraced multilateralism. So it was kind of going on that path, and it still is portraying itself like going in that path, but I don't feel like that it is doing that at all. And all these basically, and also, first of all, I don't think it's periphery. I think it's like the perfect location for proxy wars. And the second is that also the case of Albania is one where you say that, you know, it's dangerous to be enemy of the United States, but I think it's a bigger danger to be a friend of the United States. And in this case, I will illustrate what that means. It means that the profile of the anti-gender movement mobilization in Albania is not you would expect to be from some local religious community like the traditionally Orthodox or Muslim communities, but it's actually not. It's from a small sect of evangelical group of people who function like a business or a corporate or both or a lot more. Who are directly funded from the white supremacist, white Christian supremacist groups, the most extreme groups in the US, connected to MAGA, connected to neo-Nazi ideologies, connected to Project 2025, to the Heritage Foundations, and so on. And I think they see Albania as a sort of a very good entry point for further expansion of these ideologies and of these policies. I can see it now. After this extremely difficult and challenging year, I can see that for what it is. I think it's a very well thought strategy to actually redefine democracy in their own terms, to redefine political participation and representation in their own terms. And we are on the other side, and we are very much in danger. And by we, I mean not just like queer and women, but I think any sort of minority and anyone who just doesn't agree with these ideologies and these systems. I will not go into, maybe because also the previous panel elaborated that a lot, but also in the case of the war in Gaza and how, for example, ashamed I am to be Albanian in that case, for example, because my government absolutely does not represent me or a lot of other people in this regard, because yeah, they are completely like overlooking the whole situation, and it's just shameful. Like in the square when we go protest about Gaza, it's like literally 50 people. And the police doesn't even allow us to actually march. We are forced to be in a little square and not move. So these are some unique features of the, let's say, the far-right tendencies in Albania. And I will add to that the fact that now the center-right party, which is in opposition which has been actually one of the most sort of EU-friendly and also very LGBT-friendly parties in Albania in the last 30 more years. They actually were in charge of the passing of the law for protection from discrimination, which included gender identity and sexual orientation. They amended the criminal code. They introduced the first national action plan on this topic, and now they completely shifted politics. They actually have joined forces with the anti-gender movement, and now they are using all the narratives that, you know, this very well-informed collective here knows very well, you know, traditional family, protection of children, victimization, and so on. So I will not repeat any of that. So we have entered this autumn a sort of storm that I never actually probably was naive not to know that it was going to happen in Albania, because now I think Albania has become an actual hotspot on this issue. They fought viciously against the gender equality law because of these terms, like, for example, multiple identities, which, you know, it was used to describe that people don't have just one identity, but, for example, one is not just a woman, but can also be with disability and Roma and with a lot of other experiences that quantify, you know, her experience, and it should be taken all into account when policies are in place for that person. And they use this to say that, look, these, and they use really vicious language, these people are introducing multiple genders and endangering children because, you know, and they coined this 70 or 72 genders. It became, and they are so good at coining wording and messages, and people like pick them up and so on. And we got the law passed, but even there are some lessons that illustrate my next point, that unfortunately we have a political establishment that is opportunistic, neoliberal, corrupted, and they don't really, I genuinely believe they do not care about these issues. And I will illustrate to you how. So there was this huge debate about the gender equality law being passed as it was recommended by CSOs. And the Socialist Party, the ruling party, said, they started the debate, anti-gender was going in the commissions, women's organizations were going there as well, and then the SP members were like saying, oh yeah, maybe we should remove these terms, they are dangerous and whatever. And then the debate goes on, the anti-gender narratives in the media explode, I mean, activists are going mad, it's exhausting, and the hate speech is insane. And it gets to a crucial point when the Socialist Party leadership meets with the Prime Minister, and they are talking about very important matters, not this one. And on his way out of the meeting, the MPs are like, oh, Prime Minister, but what about the gender equality law? Like, illuminate us. And he's like, why are you bothering me with this question? Just do whatever the EU needs, leave me alone. And then he leaves. I think this is a perfect illustration of, like, they really don't care. This is just a geopolitical game with bigger games, with bigger aims, and so on. And it's just, it's very frustrating to realize that. It's very frustrating to realize that, yeah.
One sub-question, interestingly, you said that there is the 72 genders. Interestingly, in Serbia, there was a sum of 193 genders. It was like the imagination of one linguist, but then somehow it got stuck. I'm really wondering where that comes from, this kind of zillions of genders. But is there a translation of the word gender in Albanian? Do you have a word for that?
Gini,
or
yeah.
Which one?
We do, Gini, yes.
And is it introduced by the feminists or gender scholars and gender experts, or how did it end up in Albanian? Do you know?
I mean, from what I've read, also from your material, I mean, I feel like it was quite similar to Serbia's. Like, you know, it got integrated from, let's say, the sort of new human rights language from the 1990s, when Albania became really open to the world, and, you know, Council of Europe membership came with, you know, a list of requirements. The UN came in, so there was this sort of new, let's say, introduction of the word gender and gender equality, but I don't think they were ever perceived as something negative in Albania until now. And this is part of the anti-gender movements, because they started with saying you are, for example, genderism, you are genderizing our children. This is one of the first things that they... I know.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you.
No, I know, it's funny and stupid and frustrating. Genderizing, what the hell does it mean? Like, there's a genderism, that's how they say. Like, what the hell does that even mean? But they are using this kind of words to illustrate that this is confusing children. And in the case of Albania, they conflate everything. They are chaotic, I don't know what to say, like they are evil as well. Like they conflate everything, like they go from gender to family. Family is man and woman. And the man and the woman is what, you know, is how biology defines it. That's the natural order of things. Like, you know, they have this, and they get irritated when somebody like confronts them, even on TV debates, and they start like, and then they go, but the children, like, you know, everything is, it's a sort of a, when I think of myself, like how would I feel as a regular Albanian citizen who doesn't really engage with this topic and watch this from TV? It's really bad. Like, we know now for people from the shelter, LGBT shelter, who had spent so much time fixing their relationships with their families, because some of them are trans, non-binary, you know, they don't fall into any of these binaries, and they've taken time to understand themselves as well, and then talk to their parents, which is another layer of complexity because of the language and all that. And some of these parents are now on antidepressants. And now they're calling the shelter saying, you have actually converted and genderized our children. So all of that, like, sort of slow, progressive work that was done from the 90s onwards, it feels like it's been catapulted with just this misinformation and smear campaigns.
Thank you. Selma, please.
Thank you, Adriana. I will, some of the things that I will talk about are similar to what you just said, so it confirms that anti-gender movement is actually a movement, and a global movement. It has its national variants or examples, but they all share similar or the same characteristics. So I think that the case in Bosnia and Herzegovina also confirms this. So I will now focus. I've written my speech for today, and I will read it, and I will try to be brief, and we can discuss later. I took one specific example of anti-gender mobilization in Bosnia and Herzegovina that I found interesting, that is a recent example, and I tried to analyze it through theory in a way, through some of Judith Butler's views, and I also extracted some recommendations for future organizing and acting that we can maybe use and think about, so that is what I'm going to do now. When it comes to anti-gender actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they do not always operate as a unified, formally organized mobilizations. They act through church and religions channels, conservative academic and political circles, and media, and their campaigns rely on disinformation and fear-based rhetoric, discreditation campaigns, and pressure on activists, and etc. So one example that I want to focus on that I announced is a booklet that was published this year in Banja Luka. The booklet that's titled, or handbook titled, Encouraging Virtues, a Manual for Preventing Violence by Promoting Virtues Among Students. This handbook is presented as an educational tool designed for schools, parents, and youth workers, and it was produced as a part of a project of the same name by the Citizens Association Parents for Children's Rights. So that is an association of worried parents who want to save children from all the dangers that gender presents. So what is interesting about this publication is that it was published with the official approval and financial support of the Ministry of Education and Culture of Republika Srpska. Also, it was published by Srpsko Sabranje Baštionik, a society, a religious society, and authored by a priest, a lawyer, a professor of Serbian language and literature, and a psychologist. These are just some details about the publication that help us contextualize it. Its declared purpose is to promote traditional virtues and healthy moral development, while explaining gender equality and LGBTQ+ rights as inherently dangerous, morally corrupting, and as direct threats to children. In this publication, the concept of gender is explained as something fundamentally opposed to our culture, tradition, and faith. And the booklet repeatedly claims that so-called gender ideology, so it is explicitly referring to gender ideology, deceives the public and that it can seriously harm the psychophysical health of children. Its declared aim is to combat violence by fostering virtues, and it does so by appealing to tradition and patriarchal family as the moral foundation of society. There are three parts of the booklet. The first one is personal identity, which focuses on what it means to be a man, a woman, and their mutual relations. Then national identity, the second part, and humanity in action. I didn't want to actually do a book analysis of the content because it's familiar content. It's something that we know from other instances of similar publications, but I did take some of the quotes that I found interesting and representative, and those are the quotes that actually summarize what anti-gender ideology is. So I will just briefly read them, and then it will help us then to follow through what I termed the analysis part of this speech. So the first quote that I took is on gender ideology and violence, because as I said at the beginning, the point or the purpose of this handbook is to prevent violence and to decrease violence among youth. So they blame gender ideology explicitly for violence. They say that anything short of complete agreement by everyone with everyone, that is with proponents of liberal positions, is now interpreted as violence. So if poor anti-gender people do not agree with us, they are violent, and we accuse them of being violent. So this is, they say, done deliberately in order to extinguish the protective mechanism through which every person defends themselves and preserves their identity. If someone promotes something obscene under the new definition of violence, no one is allowed to say anything against it. And over time, we will reach the point where it's considered violence not to automatically adopt to everything that is served to us. This is how a brave new world is created. So we are basically building, gender ideologists are building this dystopian world, and they are trying to protect young, innocent children from us. Then there are, as I said, there are parts that are referring to what it means to be a man and a woman. For example, they say that in our society there is an expression, be a man. It implies being courageous, honorable, brave, and strong. Unfortunately, today we are witnessing a deep crisis of male nature, which is being extinguished. Then when it comes to women, they say women should not listen to the demonic doctrine of liberalism, which tries to turn them away from service as if it were something humiliating or degrading. For the female nature, there is no happiness outside of service. A woman is happy only when she obediently and humbly serves those close to her. I will just read two more quotes. One is on gender ideology. They say that today the so-called gender ideology is gaining more and more ground. It is based on the struggle against the natural and God-ordained principle of the family, as well as against the basic human identities, such as the sex one is born with. This ideology is directed primarily at the youngest, who are the easiest to confuse and deceive, but no one is spared its malicious influence. Many vulnerable people who did not have a solid foundation have come to believe that there is something beneficial for them in this story about countless, or 72 genders. Within themselves, they feel spiritual emptiness and meaninglessness. That's what we feel here. So, and one more quote on ethics. This is important for us because I will focus specifically on this values part and ethics. They say, today, in a time of deep social and moral changes, the value system is seriously disrupted, leading to the collapse of the fundamental principles that once guided human lives. In this chaos, moral decline becomes inevitable, and self-confidence and inner balance are difficult to attain, because it is increasingly hard to maintain integrity in a world that no longer values sincere and lasting virtues. Finally, one more thing that I found even funny, because this handbook is actually intended for schools and for school environments for students to read and then discuss about what they read later. So they gave some exercises with those texts, and one of the exercises is a discussion on that follows the lecture on gender ideology. And so the questions that students should talk about are the following: what is gender ideology? Can a man become a woman? Is gender something we choose or something given to us by God? How does accepting one's role lead to inner peace and fulfillment? And why are men and women not adversaries but companions? And the conclusions that there are also conclusions that we should arrive to. Men and women are created to complement each other, not to be the same, and gender is not something that changes. So that is what this discussion should lead to, and we can see how anti-gender this publication actually is. I don't know if how much time do I have? Do I have maybe 5 more minutes?
You do.
Okay. Thank you. So why is this publication important? I believe it's important not only because of its content, but because of its institutional backing. It shows how anti-gender ideology is normalized through state structures and how it enters everyday school environments where it does not target scholars, activists, or a policymaker, but rather children, and attempts to recruit children for future struggles. To analyze this publication, I turn to Judith Butler's claim that anti-gender movements revolve around the production of moral panic. In the anti-gender movements or mobilizations, gender does not refer, as we know, to a social category or an analytic concept. Rather, it becomes a symbol for any fear, any anxiety, or any social discomfort we have. So gender becomes the name for everything that is supposedly wrong with the world, such as the decline of the family, demographic change, sexual freedom, feminism, even ecological change, etc. So according to Butler, gender both collects and incites those fears, keeping us from thinking more clearly about what there is to fear, what there actually is to fear, and how the currently imperiled sense of the world came about in the first place. The demonization of gender is what enables anti-gender actors to mobilize strong emotions: fear, disgust, and nostalgia for an imagined moral order. Publications such as one that we just mentioned operates previously through this mechanism. They promote this view, they deepen anxieties, while sentimentalizing a return to old values and blaming gender for everything that is bad in the world. So in her book, Who is Afraid of Gender?, Butler asked, what can we do? How do we develop a counter-imaginary that is strong enough to stop the efforts at censorship, distortion, and reactionary politics that this view on gender empowers? She is asking a question: how do we actually oppose it? And while reading this, I was reminded of a strategy that is proposed by Naomi Klein, who wrote a book, No is Not Enough: Resisting Trump's Shock Politics and Winning the World We Need. She uses this term shock doctrine, which describes the brutal tactic of systematically using the public's disorientation following a collective shock, such as wars or terrorist attacks, to push through radical pro-corporate measures, often called shock therapy. And Naomi Klein claims that these tactics can be resisted, first through a firm grasp on how shock politics work and whose interests they serve. So first we need to understand them in order to be able to fight back. And second, and equally important, is that we need, according to Klein, to tell a different story from the one the shock doctors are peddling. Or we need to articulate a different vision of the world, which is based on values that we promote, such as that are based on coming together across racial, ethnic, religious, and gender divides. So according to Klein, we first need to say no, but as the title of her book says, no is not enough. We need to also offer an alternative vision. So when we return to anti-gender movements and their efforts to promote their values and their views and their ethical system, such as this publication Bosnia and Herzegovina is, we first need to understand that moral panic and ethical arguments in general are the actually strongest weapon of anti-gender movements. And Butler explains anti-gender mobilizations as moral campaigns. Or morally righteous sadism that attempts to strip people of rights in the name of morality. This is also what happened, what you mentioned at the beginning, attacking human rights, but doing it in order to protect human rights, which is a paradox and makes no sense, but that is what anti-gender movements and mobilizations do, and this is where we must intervene. The popular support they receive rests on a very simplified and supposedly natural ethical system. According to Butler, the phantasm of gender becomes the quasi-moral alibi for unleashing destruction against all those who seek to live and breathe in freedom. We should not be afraid to strategically mirror some of their narrative techniques, and since most people are not trained philosophers or researchers, they are not aware, as philosophers maybe are, that ethics is plural, contested, and historically variable. So anti-gender actors exploit this by presenting their worldview as the only morally legitimate one. Our task is to deconstruct, demystify, and even ridicule these claims in a way that non-philosophers can understand. We must expose the fact that there is no single natural ethic, that there are no eternal moral truths, and that there is no God-given social order. But pointing out the contradictions in their arguments and incoherence is not enough. It is even, we could say, useless, because anti-gender narratives are not based on reasoning or on reading, research, etc. They are openly contradictory and incoherent. So this will not take us far, and we do this. We have these discussions that are based on arguments and reasoning, and that does not help us against them. So we need to, in that sense, I say we need to mirror their strategies and what they are doing. We need to appeal to emotions and use effective strategies. For example, they use futurology. They illustrate very vividly how terrifying life would become if gender ideology wins. They present these horrifying pictures, what will happen if gender wins, that all our children will become transgender, disoriented, they will lose integrity, etc. So we need, I suggest, do the same. We need to also make our own gender utopias and anti-gender dystopias in a very approachable way, and we need to even scare people with what will happen if they win. So that is what I'm suggesting. So this means turning not only to rational argumentation, but also to, as I said, emotional strategies. And we know that politics and political action is not so much about arguments either. It's also, emotions play such a big role in our political life, such as fear, love, anger. So I think this is the strategy we should try to develop. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 20 more minutes, and I would maybe just try to wrap up in what I see that we three share, or rather 3 countries from which we come from. One thing is very clear, and this is where I'm kind of, scared about the strategy that you're offering, a strategy that is necessary. But at the same time, what seems to me to be a little bit of a problem is that what we see here from the case of Albania, from case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and from Serbia is that this is a project by the state. So it's not a project by the, concerned parents or concerned citizens, which we also know from certain countries back there at the 2010s, at the beginning of 2010s. Here we're witnessing a kind of project of the ruling parties. The example that you gave was very telling. That is something which I find, how do we in civic society, how do we in academia, or in any kind of interested groups, how do we attack the ruling system? So it is a question that has been posed to us in Serbia for a year. While I was believing that anti-gender proponents in this country are a very small, now almost non-existent, far-right, alt-right party, Dveri, I was feeling like it's great. That's perfect. I mean, they are awful, but they're so small that they will never enter the parliament. So long until I understood that it is in fact SNS that is the ruling party in the country, that is wielding the anti-gender discourses when they want to, when it's opportune, precisely the same story. So this is something which I think is important for all of us. And the other thing which is interesting to me, where I see the connection between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, but not with Albania, is that in Albania it's the evangelicals. Says everything. From where the power comes, from where the money comes, from where the discourse comes. But at the same time, because also it's the same is happening in Bulgaria, for example. Evangelicals are those who are basically bringing in the anti-gender ideology, also to some extent in Romania. Whereas in post-Yugoslav space, what we have is very strong Catholic, Orthodox, and now more and more also Muslim communities, or the priests that are the representatives of those communities, which tells us something about the fact that feminism or anything that goes in this package of that the anti-gender people are attacking was never here something towards which we were open. In fact, in the 1990s, the activists, women in black mentioned in the previous session, or anybody else here sitting today, was as hated as they are today, but now they have a different terminology for that. Traditional values, natural family, natural order, and that kind of thing. So these are like two strands of thinking where I see the linkages between us and then also certain kinds of differences. I would maybe ask you if you would want to say something, ask a question, make a comment, because I would like us to really finish with the recommendations for a better end of the day, if not life. Please. If not at this moment, then maybe you would want to reflect on these two things that I mentioned.
I mean, there's just so many thoughts rushing into my head, and I'm struggling to be like, what is more, relevant and important to share right now, being conscious that this is also a room with people who really, I understand, know a lot about this topic. So, would it be any added value to just comment or something or another? But on the positive note, I mean, I think that, as an activist, as a person who is very much involved in the LGBT and queer movement and feminist movement in Albania, I saw this psychological terror with which these movements and these systems operate. They want to instill fear into the people. And I also have become conscious of how much afraid they actually are of queer, of feminist, of liberated minds and people. The one thing they despise the most is freedom of consciousness and people standing on their 2 feet and standing on, fighting for what they believe in, going to the court, going in television, protesting on the street, challenging them. They don't want to be challenged. They would much rather, in this very complex world, be without democratic systems, but rather function as the corporation where Peter Thiel and all the other, I will not use dirty words out of respect for all of you, because I do tend to do that as well. All these, impotence, whatever people, they seek. They just want to impose a certain way of viewing the world. I think it's very much a failure of men, as myself, to understand their position in the world, and instead of saying, you know what, I need to evolve. Like, what does it mean to be a man in this day and age? And to be a woman too, or none of the above. It's like it's a state of mind as much as a physical manifestation. But these people are so obsessed with this physical manifestation, with these poses. Like, have you seen these dudes? Like, they come out on television, they're like, manifest power, manifest control, like you control the world. I mean, dude, like, chill out, like, it's so pathetic. Like, now I'm controlling the world because I'm uniting my energies and my chi and my chai, like, honestly, I feel like men have to really do a good look in the mirror and be like, what the hell does it mean to be a man in this day and age? And when they are told your masculinity, there are aspects of it that are toxic, and they're like, no, they're not, you know, like, I'm a provider, I'm a what the world, like, I'm a hunter, and I get whatever. Like, honestly, like, always, like, because this is like, you know, these systems of power are using the regular people's basic stereotypes as a form of manipulation to tell them that, you know, like, you are a provider, you are the leader, you are the alpha, and you're like, no, you're not. Like, just chill out, you know. Like, I think this is a big part of the whole like conversation, which also leads me to the, you know, the point of like also it was said yesterday with Irena and the fantastic group from Macedonia, that, you know, like, laughter, humor, education, and creating these spaces where we actually really like deconstruct these concepts and get people across the aisle to, like, you know, understand and join us in the fight. But I'll conclude very quickly just to say something that I find very inspirational for Albania, that, you know, with this gender equality law backlash, we had, in my view, one of the most amazing mobilization as community. Like, we were two collectives, the queer and the feminist one, and now we created a new group that is the Queer and Feminist Collective, so they've come together. And we have basically intensified cooperation, created a support group. We gathered the community just to, like, listen to them and tell to young people, you know, you can talk with us and not to be afraid, not to feel alone. And then we've started with mapping the counter narratives, mapping the anti-gender movement, mapping the supportive stakeholders, developing counter narratives. We're now in touch with a regional, very well-known regional media who are going to support us with the communication strategy. We have a weekend retreat just in 10 days, just for that specific job. Then we will work on basically how to empower the activists. We are going to work on the messaging and basically develop messages that we can use as talking points for everyone. So the idea here is that, for example, you are a doctor, you are a lawyer, you are, I don't know, like a mother, whatever, like, you know, to have different talking points for everyone coming from their positionality, so they can talk to people of their own community and their own understanding and their own vernacular, right? And also we are engaging regionally with the fantastic groups like BFM. We've supported, for example, together the creation of a regional strategy, and we are pushing donors to actually prioritize funding and to give as much funding as possible to organizations to tackle these issues. And also another one is, two more. Engaging the diaspora. We have a huge diaspora, Albanian diaspora in the world, and they really want to be activated. So we have already in plans like things how we're going to talk and work with them. And the last one is also doing the investigative part of the work. So where does the money come from? What are the channels? And also to figure out how to frame it for our country. Like in the case of Albania, for example, in Albania, if you say that something is Russia influenced, is a huge deal. Maybe it's not a huge deal in some other countries of the Balkans, but in Albania it's like anathema, you know? And it's so like to figure out ways how to also frame this also as a national security issue and as a democracy issue as well. So just to say that I think sometimes when we are in difficulties and we have challenges, I think these opportunities as well come, and this is an opportunity to mobilize, to build trust, to build community, to build horizontal structures, which I'm very much in favor of, and feminist structures and queer structures. So yeah, as an inspiration, I guess it's just like, you know, the way we responded, and we are going to try to maintain the momentum, I think is very much part of the let's say, encouragement and inspiration. And also remember, like, you know, Bolsonaro is going to jail, like, hello, like, there's so many amazing examples of, like, really, you know, fighting and fighting hard and succeeding. And good luck to everyone in Serbia. You have my support.
Yeah, I see that you gave us your recommendations, which we had to, you know, to put at the end, but the end is near, so yeah, you saw it better than me. And I'm especially, I mean, it's really inspirational, especially because of the fact that we in Serbia also had the suspension of gender and law equality, law on gender equality. It was suspended last year in June, and that did not trigger much of the response from any of our communities, which makes us think how, it has to make us think how we respond to things. What I can also say is I really find very positive note in what you're saying, because from my experience in gender scholarship, many gender scholars are now considering removing the use of the word gender, which I find absolutely, wrong. It is the rightest time to use the word gender and somehow fight back, and not like, oh, maybe gender is not the best of terms, so maybe we should somehow now, forget about the fact that we were using it for 60 years, and then that's constitutional of feminist theory and the way we started to think about the world together with feminism and feminist activism. Do you want to give us your...
Yes, sure, but can I first ask
Please.
you, since you mentioned some scholars that want to abandon the use of gender, what is their logic? What is the logic behind that proposal? What is their argument? Why?
Well,
I haven't heard about that.
No, I mean, this is not a Serbian case. It's really like you can find it in international discussions about that maybe gender somehow really lost the referent. We don't know what it refers to anymore. There's too many entities that it might be referring to. And maybe it's just confusing, ambivalent. So we could just put it aside, see what other terms we have, that kind of argumentation. Which, since it is absolutely true that this is not just ideas that are floating around, but very much, and we know that from North Macedonia, in particular in our region, very much it's the people who are the bearers of those ideas and who are speaking of them and about them, trying to maybe also offer a kind of positive utopia, our utopia, that are targeted physically. So in a way, when you want to remove a word, maybe you want to protect yourself, and nobody can be against that. And so from that point of view, at this very moment, some of the gender departments are being threatened all over Europe. Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
And from that point of view, maybe you think, well, if I put women back here,
Yes.
maybe I will somehow safeguard the area, or... Yeah.
It's just surprising if it comes from gender ideology theorists.
No, from our side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
From
So
our side
yeah,
of the debate.
that is surprising. But I also understand that maybe it has now a bad reputation among regular people. So maybe it can be a strategic move. But I believe also that gender. All of us. Everybody thinks they can talk about gender. And I don't think that's the case. I think there is a science on gender, and there are theories, and this concept has its history, and we should not, it should be a bit more controlled field of discussion when it comes to, because that is what makes the meaning of the term so confusing, which is also the case when it comes to fascism, anti-fascism. We don't have the definitions, and we desperately need clear meanings in order to be able to use those concepts analytically and practically, etc. So, but when it comes to ending the day positively, optimistically, it is hard to find positive examples since the struggle is not over yet. We're still fighting, and there are some discouraging events, and there are many discouraging events all over the world, locally, globally. You mentioned some, and I understand why it is hard to be optimistic, but I think that even though maybe it is hard to find reasons for that right now, we have to keep looking for those reasons, because as soon as we lose this kind of hope that we will win, that we can change something, we are serving their ends. We are helping them because we are becoming inactive, and it is very important to find reasons to keep fighting. And for example, for me, a very optimistic fact is for being here and meeting all of you and listening, talking to you, and feeling at home with people who are like-minded, who share the same values. That is very, for example, optimistic and inspiring for me. So we can find reasons to think positively. So that is what I would say. Maybe it's fine to find examples, but there are. And even when we talk about anti-gender movements, we have tools to explain them. We understand how they function. We have all the information we need to come up with strategies, and I believe that we will win. That's it.
See, this is a good lead.
30 seconds.
Please.
This is my favorite thing of this year, you know, even though January started horribly and then we had this mess in Albania, but from a sort of cosmological point of view, it's the end of the Kali Yuga and the start of the amazing age of Aquarius. It's another full-on 12,000-year cycle, and it's the death of patriarchy, and it's a start of new systems of organizing ourselves. So please, it's not going to be easy, like, oh, tomorrow we wake up and the patriarchy is like, we're done, bye. Like, it's not going to go without a huge fight. So brace up, but also I'm very optimistic. I know it's tough and hard, but like, you know, just turn also the failures, turn them into like ways of success. Okay, I failed there, so I will not do that again. I'll do something different, and there's a new way.
Thank you very much. Is there maybe someone who would want to say something positive for the end of the day? That would be very nice, to not have only the three of us finishing with a positive note. If not, then I will invite Judith Butler, who was also with us somehow, at least through Selma's words. Butler was also... Judy, please join us here. Yeah. Well, I mean, only with that idea, that this idea of joint struggle and some kind of collaboration is inscribed in this book that is now available also in our languages. In PDF, I can send, if you are interested, Who's Afraid of Gender, Ko se boji roda, and in the notion of what Butler was doing all along. So we need to think how to somehow connect more strongly and have this trust that these two wonderful people expressed in this last 1 hour with us. Join me in one applaud for them.